The grand hall of the alien palace was silent, yet tense, as the morning sunlight spilled across the polished floors. Golden banners hung from the high ceilings, swaying slightly as if the air itself held its breath. Servants moved cautiously, whispering to one another while the queen's guard stood stiff and alert. At the center of it all, the queen herself, tall, imposing, and radiating authority, examined her reflection in the polished armor she had worn for centuries. Yet something was wrong. Her eyes narrowed as she turned to her closest advisors. "Who dared touch my armor?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Every word carried the weight of her authority, every syllable resonating through the hall. It was an armor she had inherited, forged by the greatest artisans of her empire, a symbol of power, tradition, and honor. And now, somehow, it had been repaired flawlessly. Not a single seam was uneven, not a single dent remained. It gleamed as though the hands that worked on it were guided by some divine precision. The courtiers froze, unsure how to respond. Whispers rippled across the hall like wind through dry leaves. "Perhaps one of the royal smiths," someone suggested hesitantly. "No, it's too perfect," another murmured. The queen's golden eyes swept across the room, daring anyone to speak. Silence followed. No one dared admit they had touched the armor. To interfere with something so sacred was unthinkable, even for her most trusted artisans. And yet behind a tall marble pillar, hidden in shadows, a small figure leaned quietly. His hands were black with grease, and his clothes were patched and worn. Old stains and burn marks from countless experiments marked every inch of him. He was a human, a being unlike any the court had ever seen. His name was Elias. From the moment he had arrived at the palace, he had been invisible, overlooked, underestimated. And that invisibility had allowed him to do something no one else could. He had been curious when he first saw the queen's armor, admiring its intricate designs, the way the metal flowed over itself like water frozen in time. He had never intended to touch it. But the moment he saw the small crack along the breastplate, the split in the gauntlet, he could not resist. His fingers itched to work to fix it, to restore something beautiful that had been broken. He had grown up repairing, tinkering, creating from scraps, from broken machines, from things everyone else had given up on. And now, here in the greatest hall of the empire, he applied that same skill to something more important than he had ever imagined. Elias worked quietly through the night, barely breathing, barely moving except for the precise adjustments his hands demanded. He polished, reshaped, and reforged pieces that no human or alien had ever repaired before. Magic and mechanics blended under his touch, and by dawn the armor shone as though it had never been damaged at all. It was flawless, perfect, beyond anything the queen's artisans had ever achieved. And yet the fear in Elias' chest was real. Humans were fragile, he knew that. In this court they were myths, curiosities, sometimes threats. One wrong step, one misjudged glance, one misheard word, and he could be cast out, or worse. Every nerve in his body screamed caution, every heartbeat reminded him of the danger. But alongside the fear was pride, a swelling certainty that he had done something incredible, something that could change how the empire saw his kind. The queen, sensing the perfection before her, did not immediately turn her fury toward the empty hall. She examined the armor carefully, running her fingers over each seam, over the lines etched into the metal by her ancestors. She had expected flaws, repairs done in haste or with ignorance, but none existed. Every detail was precise. Every joint moved smoothly. Every enchantment hummed softly, balanced perfectly. It was impossible. Only a master or a miracle could have done this. And then her gaze swept the hall. Her eyes, sharp and unforgiving, paused over the shadow where Elias hid. The tiniest movement, a flicker of sleeve, a glint of metal on his tool belt, caught her attention. A gasp escaped one of the courtiers, quickly stifled. The queen's expression hardened. Something was in the hall, something unexpected. Elias froze, heart pounding. The moment of discovery was coming, whether he was ready or not. He had done the impossible, but now he had to face the consequences. The human who dared to touch the queen's armor was about to reveal himself, whether he liked it or not. And in that frozen moment, the hall seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the storm to break. Elias pressed his back against the cold marble pillar, holding his breath as the queen's golden eyes swept the hall. He could feel every heartbeat, every tremor of the polished floor beneath him. For a human, every step in this alien palace was perilous. Every whisper, every glance, every shadow could be a trap. Yet despite the fear, there was an undeniable thrill, a spark of pride that he had never felt before. He had done something no one else could. He had repaired the queen's armor. His hands were still slick with oil, and tiny sparks clung to his hair from the finishing touches. Every seam gleamed, every joint moved perfectly, every enchantment balanced as if it had never been broken. It was more than metal, it was art. And the thought that the queen herself would soon notice it made his chest tighten with both anxiety and excitement. Humans were fragile, small, and often dismissed, but Elias had just created proof that he was capable of something extraordinary. The palace was quiet except for the soft clinking of guards' armor as they paced. Elias' mind raced. He had seen humans mocked in stories told in alien courts, creatures too weak, too small, too insignificant to matter. He had never forgotten those stories, never stopped thinking that perhaps one day someone like him could prove them wrong. And now here he was, standing in the shadows, proof in his hands and work, ready or not for the consequences. A whisper of movement caught his attention. A servant had paused near the armor display, her eyes wide, lips trembling. She had seen him, maybe, he thought. Panic surged. He had come to this world for knowledge, for curiosity, but never for fame or attention. If the queen found out he was human before he had a chance to explain, there was no telling what might happen. Fear was a constant companion, coiled tightly around his chest, threatening to crush him. Elias remembered the nights back home, alone in his small workshop. Pieces of broken machines, shattered tools, and discarded gadgets had littered the floor. He had learned to rebuild, repair, and transform. Humans had an instinct for creation, for solving problems that others could not see. He had honed that instinct through countless failures, each one teaching patience, persistence, and humility. And now those lessons were his shield. Those lessons were his strength. He glanced at the armor again. Every symbol, every line of the metal told a story of an empire's history, of battles fought and victories won. To touch it, to fix it, had been an act of both reverence and courage. He had not done it for recognition, he had done it because he could. And the satisfaction he felt, subtle but deep, warmed him in a way he had never known. The work itself was its own reward, even if discovery meant danger. Suddenly, the queen's voice cut through the hall like a blade. "I see it now," she said softly, almost to herself, her eyes narrowing. Elias felt the blood drain from his face. Was she speaking to him, or merely muttering to the air? The uncertainty was unbearable. His fingers flexed as if holding invisible tools, ready to act, ready to defend. Humans were small, yes, but they were clever, and cleverness often outweighed size. He remembered the first time he had fixed a broken automaton back on Earth, the way pride and fear had tangled together in his chest. This moment was no different, only larger. The stakes were higher, the audience more formidable, but the feeling, the electric pulse of potential, of possibility, was the same. For the first time, he understood that a human's ingenuity could shine in any world, against any odds. The queen stepped closer to the display, her gaze scanning the flawless armor. Elias held his breath, waiting, praying that she would not see him in the shadows. Every second stretched like a rope over a chasm. The moment of truth was approaching, whether he was ready or not. And in that silence, Elias realized something that steadied him. Fear could not hold him back. His hands had created something impossible. His mind had solved a puzzle that no one else could. And maybe, just maybe, his heart was strong enough to face the storm that was coming. He straightened slightly, wiping his hands on his ragged trousers. When the queen finally spoke, he would step forward. He did not know whether she would be angry or amazed. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He, a human, had done what no one else could, and the Empire would never see humanity the same way again. The hall had fallen into a tense silence. The courtiers, once murmuring among themselves, now froze as the queen's gaze moved like a blade, sharp and deliberate. She circled her restored armor slowly, her golden eyes scanning every seam, every joint, every line etched with the history of her empire. Each movement was calculated, deliberate. She ran a gloved finger along the shoulder plate, feeling the smoothness, the flawless balance. It was impossible. The work was beyond her finest smiths, beyond even the most skilled artificers in her entire realm. Whispers rose in the hall again, quieter this time, hesitant. Could it be one of the royal smiths? A young advisor ventured, but the queen's eyes narrowed, piercing through the suggestion like a dagger. "No," she said softly, almost to herself. "No one here has the skill to do this, not in generations." Her voice carried the weight of realization. Someone had touched her armor and done it perfectly. The thought sent a ripple of unease through the court. Who among them could be bold or foolish enough to interfere with something so sacred? Elias pressed himself closer to the marble pillar, heart pounding so loudly he feared it would betray him. The queen's sharp instincts had already begun to sense an intruder. He could hear the soft steps of her guards as they moved subtly, scanning every shadow, every corner of the hall. Each metallic footstep echoed in his chest, and he swallowed hard, trying to steady his racing thoughts. Humans were not supposed to survive here, not without immediate notice. Yet he had been careful, quiet, hidden in plain sight, until now. The queen paused, her eyes flicking toward the darkened recesses of the hall. Something had caught her attention, a small, subtle movement. She leaned slightly, studying the shadows. "Step forward," she said, her voice carrying a calm authority that made the entire court shiver. The word was soft, but it was absolute. No one dared defy her tone. Elias froze. His fingers itched to work, to hide, to run, but he knew there was nowhere to go. Humans were fragile, yes, but they could be clever, and cleverness often demanded courage. Slowly, he drew in a deep breath, feeling every nerve on edge. He had never been in a place like this, never faced a ruler like her. Yet deep inside, he knew that hiding now would solve nothing. The work was done. The truth could no longer remain in the shadows. The queen's steps grew louder as she approached the pillar. Her golden eyes were unrelenting, scanning every inch of the hall. Elias could feel their weight, heavy and unforgiving. The courtiers shrank back, whispering among themselves about the unseen intruder. Some guessed, some trembled in fear, but none of them had dared approach the mystery directly. Finally, a small glint in the shadow caught her attention, the edge of a tool belt, faintly illuminated by sunlight filtering through the windows. Her eyes widened slightly. "There," she said almost to herself. "I see it now." The courtiers gasped, but the queen ignored them, her focus fixed on the hidden figure. The guards shifted, uncertain, their hands hovering near weapons, ready for any command. Elias' heart raced. His pulse pounded in his ears. He had been discovered. The moment of truth had arrived, whether he wanted it or not. A part of him wanted to flee, to vanish into the walls and escape this alien palace. But another part, the part that had repaired the armor with care, with patience, with precision, refused. He had worked too hard, risked too much to let fear claim him now. The queen stopped a few steps from the pillar, her gaze unwavering. Her voice softened slightly, tinged with curiosity now rather than anger. "Who is hiding there?" she asked, each word deliberate, measured. "Show yourself. Tell me who dared repair what none of my artisans could." Elias' breath caught. This was it, the moment when a human would be revealed to an entire alien court for the first time. One wrong move, one word, and he could face exile or worse. But he knew he had no choice. He straightened his back, wiped his hands on his worn trousers, and prepared to step out of the shadows. A part of him trembled. Another part surged with pride. Humans were underestimated, dismissed, often overlooked, but here in this hall he could show what one human's skill and courage could accomplish. The queen, the empire, the world, none of them had ever encountered a human like him before, and now she was about to. Elias' chest tightened as the queen's golden eyes locked onto him. The moment of truth had arrived. The air in the hall felt heavier, charged with anticipation. Courtiers and guards alike held their breath, waiting for what would happen next. Every heartbeat of Elias felt like a drum echoing through the polished marble floor. He had spent hours, maybe days, working in silence, perfecting the armor, and now the entire empire's gaze was on him. He took a tentative step forward, his small frame seeming even smaller in the grandeur of the hall. His hands trembled slightly, still smeared with oil and soot, tools hanging loosely from his belt. Fear and pride warred inside him. Humans were fragile creatures, untested in this vast, alien world. One wrong move, one wrong word, and he could be exiled, or worse. Yet he knew the truth could not remain hidden any longer. I repaired your armor, your majesty," he said, voice trembling but steady, carrying every ounce of honesty and courage he possessed. The hall fell silent. Whispers died instantly, replaced by a heavy, expectant quiet. Courtiers stared in disbelief. The queen, usually so commanding and untouchable, paused, her golden eyes narrowing, studying the small human who had dared to approach her. Her expression was unreadable at first, a mixture of shock and anger. "A human," she repeated, disbelief coloring her voice. "Here, in my hall, do you understand the audacity of touching royal relics, the disrespect of meddling with something centuries old?" Her gaze cut through him like a blade, sharp and uncompromising. Elias straightened, drawing a deep, steadying breath. "I did it because I could, Your Majesty," he said. "Because it was broken and it needed fixing. I meant no disrespect. I only wanted to restore what had been damaged." His words were simple, honest, but carried an unshakable weight. It was not defiance, it was truth, and truth, he knew, had a power of its own. The Queen's golden eyes studied him carefully. She had seen many things in her long life, traitors, spies, and opportunists, but never anyone like this. A human, small, seemingly fragile, yet brimming with an unexpected courage. There was something different in the way he held himself, in the way his gaze did not waver, even under her intimidating presence. It was a courage she had rarely encountered, even among her own people. The courtiers whispered among themselves, some fearful, some incredulous. Humans were myths in their world, stories told of distant worlds, of small beings who could not possibly survive among them. And yet, here was one, standing boldly before the Queen, claiming credit for something impossible. The Queen's voice softened slightly, curiosity now threading through her tone. You fixed it perfectly," she said almost to herself. "No artisan in my empire, no smith, no master could achieve this. How could you possess such skill?" Her hands hovered near the armor as if hesitant to touch it again, afraid to believe that a human had truly succeeded. Elias swallowed hard. "I have always learned to fix things, Your Majesty," he said quietly. "Machines, tools, broken artifacts, I learned from mistakes, from failure, from trying again and again. That is how I know I could repair your armor. I never expected praise, only to help." For a moment the Queen did not speak. She simply watched him, studying the quiet determination in his eyes, the way his small hands trembled slightly but still held the confidence of someone who had done something remarkable. Something that no one else could do. Something human. Finally she spoke, voice low and deliberate. "Very well," she said. "You have revealed yourself. Let the court see you. Let them understand the courage it takes to dare the impossible." The hall seemed to exhale as guards and courtiers alike turned to witness this historic moment. Elias, trembling with a mix of fear and pride, stepped fully into the light, no longer hidden, no longer a shadow. He was a human. He was real. And he had just shown an empire what humanity was capable of. The Queen's gaze never left Elias. The hall, which had moments ago been filled with whispers and tension, now seemed to shrink around him. Every courtier's eyes were fixed on the small human who had dared to reveal himself. Elias' palms itched, not for tools this time, but for courage. The courage to prove that humans were more than myths, more than fragile beings overlooked by the galaxy. The Queen stepped forward, her voice calm but carrying authority that resonated through the hall. "You have shown skill in repairing what is broken," she said. "But skill alone does not define worth. You will demonstrate your ability under true trial. You will restore what even my empire fears to touch." From behind her, a heavy, damaged relic was brought forward. It was unlike anything Elias had seen, an ancient device, part machine, part enchantment, with delicate mechanisms intertwined with glowing energy lines. The courtiers gasped, stepping back. The relic had been considered impossible to restore for generations, its secrets too intricate, its mechanisms too alien. Even the most skilled artificers of the empire had failed. Elias swallowed, his heart pounding. His mind raced, analyzing every visible gear, every faint hum of energy, every line of alien script etched into the metal. Fear clawed at him, whispering that he could fail, that the Queen's wrath would fall on him if he made a mistake. But pride and determination surged stronger. Humans had always turned obstacles into opportunities, problems into triumphs, and he had been given a chance to show that. He knelt before the relic, examining it from every angle. His hands moved with precision, tracing invisible pathways, aligning mechanisms, adjusting the tiniest screws, shifting delicate energy conduits. Sparks danced around his fingers and a faint hum filled the hall. The courtiers whispered again, some in awe, some in disbelief. No human had ever been so daring, so precise. Hours seemed to pass in silence. Elias' concentration never wavered. He could feel the weight of the entire empire pressing on him, yet he allowed himself no distraction, no fear. His mind, trained by years of tinkering and repairing broken machines, worked like a well-oiled clock. Each adjustment, each alignment brought the relic closer to life. Finally, with a delicate click, the last mechanism fell into place. Light coursed through the relic, a warm, steady glow that pulsed in harmony with the hall's energy. The hum became a clear, pure note vibrating in everyone's chest. The queen's eyes widened. The impossible had been done. The ancient, feared relic was restored perfectly. A silence fell, heavier than before. Then slowly the queen's lips curved into a small, almost reluctant smile. "Remarkable," she whispered. Her voice carried more awe than reprimand. She looked at Elias as if seeing him for the first time, not as a fragile human, but as a creator, a thinker, a being capable of achieving greatness. The courtiers leaned forward, their whispers now filled with admiration. "A human could do this?" one muttered. Another shook their head in disbelief. Humans had always been considered myths, stories told in caution. Yet here was proof, undeniable and shining, that their ingenuity could rival, even surpass, ancient artisans of the empire. Elias rose slowly, his small frame standing tall despite exhaustion. His hands were black with grease, his clothes torn and smudged, but his eyes shone with quiet pride. He had faced the impossible, and he had succeeded. Humans were often overlooked, dismissed, underestimated, but they were capable of miracles. The queen stepped closer, her golden eyes meeting his. "You have proven yourself," she said, her voice firm yet approving. "Not by lineage, not by birthright, but by skill, by courage, and by the strength of your mind. You are more than a human here. You are a force. You will remain in my service, and your talents will shape the future of this empire." Elias bowed deeply, swallowing back tears of relief and pride. In that moment he understood the truth he had always known. Humans were not weak, not insignificant, not forgotten. With courage, creativity, and determination, even the smallest beings could change the course of worlds. And he had just done it in the heart of an empire that had doubted him from the start. The hall was still, the air vibrating with quiet astonishment. Elias, standing before the queen, felt the weight of every eye upon him, yet a new sensation bloomed in his chest: pride. Not the reckless pride of a human seeking fame, but the deep, grounding pride of someone finally seen for what he truly was. He had faced fear, expectations, and restored the impossible. And now, the queen herself regarded him with something more than mere curiosity. The courtiers whispered among themselves. Many had never imagined a human capable of such skill, courage, or focus. "It is unbelievable," muttered one advisor, shaking his head. "A human and yet perfect." Murmurs like ripples passed through the hall, but the queen's gaze silenced them. Her golden eyes were fixed solely on Elias, as if measuring not just his skill, but the essence of his being. "You have done what no artisan, no master, no scholar of this empire has managed," the queen said, her voice low and deliberate, yet tinged with wonder. "Not by strength, not by power, but by intelligence, patience, and determination. You have revealed a truth that my people have long ignored. Humans are not merely fragile myths. You have proven they are creators, thinkers, and perhaps even legends." Elias' hands, still smeared with oil, trembled slightly. Recognition from the queen was a weight heavier than any tool he had ever lifted, heavier than any machine he had repaired. For a lifetime, humans had been dismissed as weak, stories told to caution against underestimating them. Yet here he was, a single human standing boldly in the heart of an alien empire, shaping history with his skill and courage. The queen stepped closer, her golden armor catching the light of the hall. She paused, studying him, her gaze searching not for faults but for the measure of his spirit. "You will remain here," she declared finally. "You will teach, you will craft, and you will serve not as a subordinate but as a valued mind among us. Your work will shape this empire's future, human." Elias' chest swelled with emotion. He had dreamed of mastery in small workshops back on his world, tinkering with broken machines no one else cared for. Yet now, the dream had grown larger than he could have imagined. He would not just repair objects. He would help shape an empire, teach others, and leave a mark that transcended worlds. The courtiers began to bow, some reluctantly, some in awe. Even the guards, who had once viewed him as an anomaly, now regarded him with a mixture of respect and disbelief. Whispers spread through the hall. "The human, he is not what we thought." Others nodded in agreement, their eyes wide with astonishment. A new chapter in the empire's history had begun, written not by royal blood or ancient lineage, but by a human who dared to believe he could make a difference. The queen's voice softened as she addressed him again. "You have shown us the value of courage, intelligence, and persistence. These are traits often overlooked in your kind, yet here you stand as proof that they are unmatched. Your presence will remind this empire never to underestimate those who are different, who are small, or who seem fragile. Elias bowed deeply, feeling tears sting at the corners of his eyes. His journey from a tinkering human in a distant world to the center of an alien empire had been filled with fear, doubt, and countless trials. Yet every risk, every sleepless night, every careful adjustment had led to this moment. Recognition, respect, and belonging, things he had longed for his entire life, were finally within reach. As the queen turned to her court, Elias realized that his work had done more than repair machines. It had repaired perceptions, shattered myths, and built bridges between worlds. For the first time, humans were seen not as fragile outsiders, but as capable, creative beings who could alter the course of history. And Elias, a simple human tinker, had become the living proof of that truth. Weeks had passed since Elias had revealed himself to the queen and the empire. The hallways of the palace, once filled with whispers of disbelief, now buzzed quietly with curiosity and admiration. Artisans and engineers had begun to study him, watching the human tinker with keen interest. Soldiers glanced at him in awe, and courtiers murmured stories of the small human who had dared to do what no alien had ever achieved. Elias had become a symbol not just of skill, but of the unyielding spirit of humanity. He worked tirelessly in his new workshop, the largest space the palace had ever offered a human. Tools and machines of every shape and size were scattered across benches, wires, and glowing conduits snaking across tables. Yet amidst the organized chaos, Elias moved with precision, calm, and confidence. Every creation, every repair was a testament to the human mind's ingenuity. And every time he completed a project, he felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense of belonging that had been foreign to him for so long. The queen visited him often. She no longer saw a fragile outsider, but a mind that had reshaped her empire's understanding of the universe. She watched as Elias repaired complex devices, improving them in ways her artisans could not imagine. "You have changed everything," she said one evening, her tone softer than ever. "Not just the machines, Elias, but the way we see the world." Elias looked up from a delicate mechanism, eyes meeting hers. "It is not only my work, Your Majesty," he replied. "It is proof that even those who seem small or overlooked can accomplish great things. Humans and others like me are capable of more than myths suggest." His words carried conviction, but also humility. He did not seek praise, only understanding, and now he had achieved it. The empire began to change in subtle ways. Alien inventors began collaborating with him, learning techniques they had never considered. Young apprentices were inspired by his courage, his patience, and his creativity. The palace, once rigid and tradition-bound, began to feel alive with possibility. And everywhere Elias went, the story followed him. The human who had repaired the queen's armor, restored ancient relics, and proved that ingenuity and courage were universal. One evening, after a long day of work, the queen visited his workshop alone. The air was warm with the hum of machinery and the faint scent of oil. She studied Elias quietly, noting the focus in his eyes, the care in his movements. "You have given us more than skill," she said softly. "You have reminded us that greatness is not limited by species, size, or history. You have shown that courage and intellect can shape worlds." Elias paused, a small smile touching his lips. "I only did what I knew I could, Your Majesty," he said. "I never expected to change an empire only to fix what was broken." His words, simple yet profound, resonated in the quiet workshop. The queen's expression softened, and for a moment she simply watched him, seeing the human who had dared to believe in himself. As the sun set over the alien palace, casting golden light across the walls, Elias felt a deep, unshakable peace. He had arrived as a stranger, an overlooked tinkerer from a distant world. He had faced fear, uncertainty, and the weight of an entire empire's expectations. And now he had not only survived, but he had thrived, leaving a legacy that would endure long after he was gone. The queen placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are no longer just a visitor," she said. "You are part of this empire, part of its story, and part of its future." Elias nodded, his heart full. In that moment he realized that humans, so often dismissed, underestimated, and feared, could leave marks on the universe that even the greatest powers could not ignore. And so the small human tinker, with hands blackened by oil and a heart full of courage, became more than a craftsman. He became a symbol of hope, proof that ingenuity, determination, and bravery could transcend worlds. The empire would remember him, not as a myth, not as a curiosity, but as a human who dared to show what his kind was truly capable of. And in that legacy, Elias found something more valuable than any machine he had ever built. He had found belonging, purpose, and the knowledge that one human could indeed change the world.